Hi, and welcome to Getting Down to Business. My name is Pat Frew, Executive Director of the Covington Business Council. This program explores economic development topics in Covington and throughout Kenton County. And we want to thank TBNK for being a great broadcast partner to bring this program to you today. With us today, we have Brad Zapp. He's the founder of Connetic Ventures and Connetic Angels, Northern Kentucky's first formalized angel investment group. Brad, welcome. Glad to have you today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah. Now, Brad is a serial entrepreneur. He helped found Legacy Financial Advisors. And of course, your father, Bob, started Bank of Kentucky. So this entrepreneurial spirit is really in your blood. You've experienced it from an early age.
Yeah, and it's not just my dad and me, but before him, my dad learned it from his father. Started a concrete company. My Uncle Billy bought and took over and operated and expanded the concrete company. And my grandfather on my mother's side owned a construction company, and as did her brother. So I've really not learned anything else other than to be an entrepreneur.
Neat. So let's look at the whole ecosystem of the startup community, Brad, with all the investment there. Why do you think that Greater Cincinnati has had so few exits or acquisitions from larger companies?
Well, it's hard to say, but a couple of reasons. First off, we're just young, so this just takes a long time. So startup ecosystem, venture capital, investing in small businesses, growing them, and then ultimately to a size that a strategic company, could use them for their services, just takes time. So in Greater Cincinnati, this ecosystem really started to take off in about 2011, and Northern Kentucky probably a year later. So it's only 6 or 7 years old, and these things, might take closer, to a decade. And I think the other reason is, I just think the big companies probably, there's not an awareness factor or an education on that, hey, the startup ecosystems exist. I'll speak for myself. When I was at Legacy and was just busy, doing my own business, I was completely oblivious of this, emergence of the startup ecosystem. So I think it's really just about, for those of us that are in the ecosystem, grabbing some of our friends at these big companies and say, hey, why don't you come take a look at this and just raise the awareness a little bit more.
Yeah. I know that you've also opened, in addition to your office here in Covington, you've also opened up offices in Chicago and Pittsburgh, and you plan to expand more. Why is it important to expand and not just concentrate on the local business community?
Yeah, so this is a tough decision and sort of a tough topic early on when we started our company in 2015. We believed at the time that we could be successful just sort of operating regionally. But because the ecosystem was so young, that we didn't think that was the best way to deliver returns to our customers, which are our investors. And so we had to go out to some more mature markets so we could deliver those returns. And at first, honestly, that was unpopular because the economic development wisdom is to keep every dollar here. Well, and trust me, if I could invest every dollar regionally, if I could invest every dollar on Madison Avenue, Covington, Kentucky, that's what I would do. But it's not going to be good for the city if people who are our customers, investors, who gave us their hard-earned dollars, if I don't give it back to them and then some to continue investment, for them to talk to their friends to say, hey, you should, go invest in a fund, you should invest in a startup. That's not going to be good for the city. That's not going to be good for the region. So we take a very long view, as far as what good do we do from an economic, development standpoint. So if we go to these other markets, you know what? Not only can we make some money for our customers, we might bring a company back. We might bring a talented person back. We may bring investment dollars into the city. So what started out with our customers as an unpopular decision, if you asked any of them to this day, they've all come full circle. They know that we are rooted here in Northern Kentucky and that this is really a good thing.
Good. What makes Connetic so different than other venture capital companies in the region?
Well, I mean, you said it in the sentence.
Yeah.
We're a venture capital firm, and so I know everyone doesn't know what that is, and that's because in Northern Kentucky we're the only one that exists. So if you know what a bank is, and because there's lots of banks and we all use banks, but venture capital, we're the only one, and we're not just unique, like so unique in Northern Kentucky. There is no other venture capital firm in the entire state of Kentucky. So that's sort of how unique we are.
Has that helped garner more interest from the state in potential funding or assistance in other ways, or have you been able to leverage that at all?
We've not, honestly. I would. We have some support that comes out of Lexington, Kentucky, and that's probably because they've had an angel group, which is like a loose-knit group of high net worth individuals that invest in local deals. But outside of a little bit of support of Lexington, we've not done the best job of leveraging Frankfurt or anything maybe that the state has to offer. And because it's so unique to the state of Kentucky, again, I think there's a learning curve and awareness and education on, well, why is this even important for economic development or jobs? And so that probably falls on us, but so far, we've not been able to do anything.
You were talking earlier about in a given week you may go out of town every other week or so to talk to funders in various places. Tell us how far you've gone, where you've gone to visit people. And I know there is no typical week for you, but a lot of people might be interested to know what you do with your time.
Okay. Well, first I have to say I'm lucky that I don't travel the most at my company. My partner, Kyle Schlotman, travels probably every week on average. But in my last job, I traveled 0. So I went home every single night. So for me, this is quite unique. It's probably every other week at this point that I'm going out of town. As far as how far my travel's taken me, well, the farthest is Silicon Valley. I went out there on the West Coast. On the East Coast, at this point, I make regular trips to New York City. This is going to sound insane, but New York, of all the cities that we travel to in this industry, is much smaller and close-knit. I find it easier to navigate than, say, Chicago, which is another place because of our office that we go a lot. And then down south, Atlanta would be a regular stop for us, and we're actually just getting ready to forge a relationship and build inroads into Dallas-Fort Worth, where a former Northern Kentuckian is, and so he's going to help us out.
That's great. What has Connetic's impact been so far in Covington?
I'd like to think a lot. So first off, as a small business owner, forget as a venture capitalist, but Northern Kentucky is nothing but a bunch of small businesses. And that's what we've always been, and that's what's made us successful. And small business owners, we go into a community. We typically buy owner-occupied real estate. We did that at Connetic. We've probably bought, 3 or 4 buildings. Most of the property that we own at the time was on the southern end of Madison Avenue, which is on the fringes of the urban core. So I know that's been appreciated. So we bought that. We put our headquarters down there. We've hired 5 total employees. 4 work directly out of that office full time. We've invested in, locally, which is what everyone cares about. Let's say we've probably invested in 3 or 4 Covington companies of all types. And then as important as that, Kyle, myself, Kim Bannon that works for us, we've mentored, coached, or consulted for probably 5 or 6 Covington companies, and all of them have had some level of success. So we want to do more of that, and the more successful we are, the more successful the neighborhood around us will be, is sort of the message that we talk about internally and to anyone else that we talk to.
We talked about the state earlier and kind of the lack of funding. Why should the Commonwealth care about venture investment?
Well, so venture capital is, so can you imagine a community So Northern Kentucky, imagine if we had no banks. No Fifth Third, no BB&T, nobody, no bank. Would we have any business? Probably not, right? That is a part of the capital structure. That's a part of the jobs equation. That's a part of community. Well, the world and business over the next 15 years is going to look a lot different than it did the past 15 to 30 years. Venture capital is kind of like banking for the new small businesses, which today they use sexy slang and they call it things like startups and entrepreneurs. So we're a part of the jobs equation. So we are, capital that's in a bucket that people can come to us and, tell us who they are, tell us about their great idea, tell us about their business, tell us why they're going to win, and we've got money for them to help them succeed.
What can the state do to improve the venture ecosystem in Kentucky?
So, first off, anything that helps capital pool together would be super helpful. So just the setup costs, just the syndication costs, just the legal paperwork. Think about the travel, the marketing, and the education that a small little company like ours has to do. It might take literally 250 meetings to get this done. It takes thousands of pages of paperwork. It takes thousands of dollars in legal fees. It takes thousands of dollars in Kinko's printing fees. Mm-hmm. So if the state was to encourage local communities for successful business owners to pool their money together in a formalized pot to start these new venture capital funds, anything the state could do to take, that's just a friction point, right? If I was to say, hey, this is a great idea, and you're like, I'm in, and I said, oh, Pat, but we need $100,000 first to get it going. It's a friction point. So anything the state could do to help capital form, that's a good thing. The second thing is this is new. There's a reason we're the only venture capital firm around. So some sort of, a marketing campaign, a statewide. You've seen different states or the federal governments do all sorts of things about smoking, guns, or, whatever. But an education campaign on, hey, this is what venture capital is. This is a real thing, and this is what it could do to your community. These are the exact types of activities that governments could get behind that would help a private organization like ours and others form.
Great. It's time for us to take a break. You're watching Getting Down to Business. We'll be right back.
Hello. Yes. Can I ask a few questions about the apartment on Park Street?
What was your name?
My name is Juan Hernandez.
It's been rented.
Oh, it's gone. Hello, my name is Sanjay Kumar. I am calling about the apartment on Park Street.
It's not available.
Not available? Hello, my name is Tyrone Washington. I'm calling about the apartment on Park Street.
Just been rented.
Hello, I am Chen Ling. My name is Khalid bin Ali. I'm Tuan Vo. Hello, my name is Moshe Goldberg. I use a wheelchair. It's gone. Not available. All right. Thank you. Yes, hello, my name is Graham Wellington. I'm calling about the apartment for rent on Park Street. Is that still available?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Really?
Housing discrimination is illegal. If you think you've been a victim because of your race, color, national origin, sex, religion, disability, or family status, call us. Fair housing. It's not an option. It's the law.
And we're back to Getting Down to Business. I'm your host, Pat Frew, joined by Brad Zapp, founder of Connetic Ventures and Connetic Angels. And Brad, what's everyone's biggest misconception about venture capital?
So there's a couple that come to mind. I would say one is everyone thinks venture capital is the same thing as private equity. So the only similarity between private equity and venture capital is the private part, that we are investing in companies that you can't find, buy or sell on the stock market. But private equity typically is much larger, much older companies. Venture capital is way, many years before private equity and much smaller. And then on the flip side, some people they think of venture capital as two guys with an idea in a garage, and that's not exactly true either.
Yeah. When people look at their financial portfolios, you're a former manager there, what types of people should have venture capital as part of that portfolio?
Yeah, so you're asking me to take out my current hat and put on my old certified financial planner hat. Look, the bottom line is venture capital is a very compelling asset class, and it's just hard to get access to. But pretty much any, high net worth that has a portfolio of even, $1 million or $2 million, everyone, regardless of risk tolerance, should have at least something placed in venture capital.
And do most people do that, or do you find people that there are a lot of people that still need to be converted?
Hardly anyone here does. I mean, so most people need to be converted, which is, why that there's such an education gap or an awareness issue, particularly in Kentucky. So it wasn't too many years ago when alternative investments, the only one that portfolio managers would use when I started in the business was real estate. And people had to be converted to putting real estate in their investment portfolio. Now everybody does that. So since then, we've moved on from real estate to commodities to private equity. So venture is going to get in there. It is a harder asset class to get access to. So, but if you're a person that has that type of portfolio, it definitely belongs in your portfolio.
So you think it's no amount of education right now is necessarily going to help. It's going to come with time.
I mean, education is certainly going to help, and there's a customer out there for sure for any venture capital firm, fund, or angel group if they were made aware of it. Right? There's a certain type of person that says, yes, this is exactly what I was looking for. So education will help, but no, I mean you can't rush change. I mean it's just going to come at its own natural pace.
Right. Is there any area where you think Connetic adds unique or disproportionate value?
Well, yeah, there's one thing that we do that's different than traditional venture capital is we're a huge user of software. So we have developed our own proprietary software. It's artificial intelligence. It's in the cloud, and it uses machine learning. What we basically do is we go out and collect data from companies. We rank companies using that data, and the machine memorizes it for all time so we can make better decisions. Venture capital traditionally is usually belly to belly, coffee meetings, beer meetings, whatever. We do that too. But we do have this proprietary technology that is one of a kind in the entire Middle America, honestly.
What are some of these factors, Brad, that makes a company a good company to invest in? I'm sure some of this is fact and science and numbers, and another part of it is just gut feeling, I guess. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of factors that go into this, and if you asked 10 venture capitalists, what do you look for, what do you need, you'd get 10 different answers. So I can just tell you for us, above all else is the people. I mean, people make a huge difference. And when we're looking at people, one of the things that we're looking at when you're talking about running a business or creating a product or something, we want to be able to look back in your life somewhere to say, what have you done? What have you created before this? If you've been in the service business your whole life and you're 50 and you're jumping out and you're going to do something now, I don't know if that's for us. But if you're a serial entrepreneur whose time hasn't come quite yet, we're going to be very interested in you.
What's one of the most common errors you see from startup founders?
Well, so startup founders, I think, don't look at their customers enough. Or another way you'd say that is they don't really focus on the problem that they're trying to solve. They say they do, but what we watch them do is they're focused on their solution. So they're really in there and they're kicking butt and they're making this amazing product and they want to tell you and the whole world about this awesome product or service that they got, and they're featuring it to death and they're not focused on the customer. So they're not out there relationally, they're not driving revenue into their companies, and I just think it's a focus problem. Focus on the customer, focus on the problem, you're going to make money, your company will do great. Focus on your product and solution, you're going to have a good story one day, but not a great company.
Is there any limit to the number of good ideas for startup companies, and what's the best way for people to come up with ideas for whatever venture they decide to undertake?
Well, I mean, there's an infinite number of ideas. I mean, we see, we log about 100 a month in just opportunities. How many do we see? It's probably double that. So ideas are everywhere. I don't know exactly what the best way is to come up with an idea, but as far as accessing us, if you do have an idea whose time has come and you have turned that idea into a business and you just need to take it to the next level, how do you get to us? Go to our website, Connetic Ventures. And it's fast, free, and fun. Again, we use automated software in the cloud, so you can apply for funding using any device over any Wi-Fi connection anywhere in the world.
I don't know if you want to get into this, but maybe some of the more inventive and great ideas you've heard for pitches, and then maybe one or two that kind of finished at the bottom.
So I'll at least tell you some, what I think's cool, maybe not what the audience thinks cool. So I'll tell you two that the audience might think is cool. From our Pittsburgh office, there's a device company this is Kentucky. We have fishermen in Kentucky. There's this little tiny device called the Bullseye, and you can go to any Dick's and you can find it. But basically, you attach it to your fishing pole, and it tracks all the data on all your fishing trips of everything you'd ever want to know about. Caught this fish, it weighed this much, this time of day, use this lure this deep, and that's pretty cool. Better than using like a fishing journal. And then we have another company that is a personal cybersecurity device. So, when you travel around, whether you're in a hotel, a coffee shop, a restaurant, and you tap into public Wi-Fi, your information is not secured. And if you go to your office, all of our Wi-Fis are secured. So wouldn't it be cool just to carry around a little device that would protect cybersecurity for you? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really brilliant. I will tell you, I wish we had a bloopers video of all the really bad ideas. But you know what? It's really hard to come pitch someone your idea. So I definitely don't want to call anyone out on that. But we've seen our fair share of hilarious ones, yes.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's almost like public service. You don't want to call anybody out, even though sometimes politicians drive us crazy. They're out there putting their life on the line, and so you don't want to besmirch somebody's reputation just because they had a terrible idea.
I've had my fair share of terrible ideas too.
Investors often focus on a firm's competitive advantages. What's Connetic's competitive advantage?
So, let's just be clear. We are a firm. We work full-time, and we develop a portfolio of private companies, and we are out in multiple markets. So if you were just to take those 5 or 6 characteristics, and if you're an investor and compare those up against any other, funding opportunity, that just makes us different. And there are other serious investment firms in town. I have 2 good friends across the river. Queen City Angels and Refinery Ventures are very serious investors. But again, in Kentucky, we're wildly unique, and we are an access point to multiple markets to build a diversified fund.
We're almost out of time. Anything else that you wanted to cover that we didn't have a chance to talk about, Brad?
Look, I would just say venture capital this is cool, and this is really fun. And you don't have to be an investor to come talk to us. I've seen you at our events before, so you know what it's like. Knock on our door, call on us, email us. We'd love to tell you more about us.
What's the best way for people to reach you?
Really email me or email any of our employees. We're all locals. It's usually just last name at Connetic.Ventures. And
spell Connetic because they may not know.
Connetic is CONNETIC.Ventures. And I don't always get back to you in the first couple of days, but if you email us, I'll eventually get around to you.
Any special meaning behind Connetic and how you came up with that name?
Well, I didn't come up with it at all, so I'm not that smart. But a very smart Covington guy did, named Jay Becker at BLDG.
Okay.
So it's a made-up word, so we could trademark it. And I think he thought I had a lot of energy, like kinetic, and he just added the co. And you'd have to ask Jay, is that about community? Is it about
Connetic with
Covington?
the K is what it
Yeah, yeah.
to
So
connect.
he gets all the credit, and now it's a thing, and it's kind of cool.
Well, that's great. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for joining
Yeah,
us, Brad.
thanks for having me.
Our guest has been Brad Zapp, founder of Connetic Ventures and Connetic Angels. We appreciate you watching. I'm your host, Pat Frew of the Covington Business Council. We hope you join us next time for Getting Down to Business.